All right. Welcome everyone to the Wallet Interoperability Special Interest Group call for August 11th, 2024. Let's see, today on the agenda, we will hear about the first global interop of wallets, the May 5th demonstration of OIDF4VP plus digital credentials API plus high assurance interop profile plus digital credentials query language. So really looking forward to that. Thank you so much, Joseph, for joining us. Let's see, we are recording this call. It will be posted on the meeting page later today. We are following the Linux Foundation antitrust policy and the Open Wallet Foundation Code of Conduct. Let's see. Are there any announcements before we get started? I know there's a big one about DidWebVH. Stephen, if you wanted to talk about that one.
Sure. Thanks. DidWebVH had a contribution completed last week from Affinity. And so their implementation, their Rust implementation of DidWebVH is now in diff, which is excellent. It's a full implementation with witness and watcher support and all other features, and has been tested for interop with the two other full implementations, the TypeScript and Python implementations that BC.gov had previously contributed. So all three are now available. There had been a previous partial version of Rust that's been archived, and there's a LinkedIn post and a blog post on diff about the release. We continue at the BC.gov Digital Trust team continues to deploy, and we're inching closer to being able to have a open sandbox that anyone can use to just in their browser and with a web agent or with a wallet, mobile wallet, be able to exchange credentials rooted in DidWebVH. So we're excited about that. The PRs in Credo got merged last week as well. So DidWebVH board is now part of Credo. It's in the 06 release already, and there will shortly be a 05 17 that will include DidWebVH support.
That's super great to hear. Thank you. All right, other announcements, and also if it's your first time joining the call and you'd love to introduce yourself and hop off mute and talk about what you're interested in or working on in this space, that would be a great time. Yeah, or other announcements. Yes, Ramek.
There's a bit on the news this week about Hashgraph doing ID trust with the Linux Foundation under a thing called Project Hero. I wondered if anyone knew about it at all.
Yep. Hiro is part of Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. They've been with us for about a year. I believe they are going to propose graduation to the next stage. I don't work on Hiro, obviously, but also the Hiro team and Hedera, the Hedera/Hiro team contributed a plugin for Occupy maybe 3 months ago. Stephen Kerrang, check my math on that one. And yeah, they're a really great team. They gave a presentation at a previous Occupy meeting. I'll try to dig it up while this call is going on and put it in chat.
They're in the news this week. That's why they've hit the news.
Yeah. Well, they had their big event last week, Rare Evo, I think, in Vegas, and that was the big Hedera community event. So there was a bunch of news that was launched. But yeah, a solid team. We've had Diane from Hiro Hedera on one of our calls, and I believe Hendrik was at the Global Digital Collaboration in Geneva a couple weeks ago. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can send over the PR with the graduation request and the different ways that they are meeting the exit criteria for the incubation phase. So yeah, super exciting. All right, let's see. Other announcements or introductions? All right, in terms of project updates, let's see. For Akapai, Stephen, is there anything you'd like to call out in particular?
Nothing, just ongoing. I think we'll do a RC, a release candidate for 132 this week. Might even do that today. So we're starting on the next patch release coming out. I did a survey of PRs. We've got a handful of PRs that were completed in since the last release, so we'll get those pushed out and made available. Review continues on the significant change that enables better database access while still maintaining security that will enable improved user experience. So the canon work that we've talked about a few times.
Absolutely. Cool. Let's see. Anything else on any of the other projects that anybody would like to call out?
Yeah, Credo is meant to be going to 0.5717 soon. That's what they're saying on their Discord. So they're basically looking at a
Yeah,
release soon. Sorry, has
we are
anyone here?
just chatting with Steven at this moment.
You are.
Yeah, it's a real-time communication. It's a two-channel communication. Yeah, I think we are going to release probably this week if everything goes well. The 0517. Yeah, this one includes that, as Steven mentioned, the DidWeb VH resolver support. So yeah. Actually, within my team, we also want to include the registrar part of the DidWebH on Credo. So probably, well, we're not going to wait until that to release it, but just for you to know that we also want to add this part for the DidWebH support.
Excellent. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that update. Let's see, any other project updates?
Oh, I guess we should definitely, I see Multipass is there. Multipass was promoted to a growth project from a labs to a growth this past week.
Awesome. Cool. Great. And then looking ahead to the next several weeks in the Interop SIG, we will hear next week about EUDI PLO, the protocol liaison. Can't remember exactly what that stands for. And then we'll also hear about the Longfellow ZK and trust spanning protocol. So stay tuned for those as well. But with that, if there are no, feel free to jump in and stop me if there are any final announcements or updates. But with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Joseph. Thanks again so much for joining us.
Great. Thank you, Char. Thanks for the invite. It's appreciated. Set my screen again. So I mean, this isn't so much of a formal presentation. It's a bit of several different presentations and me talking. I think for those of you that don't know me, so obviously my name's Joseph Heenan. I'm a standards specialist and the certification director at OpenID Foundation. That's the kind of part-time role I spend half my time on. My other half of my time goes on being the CTO at Authleet. That's one of the vendors, kind of more in the OAuth space, but also dealing with verifiable credential issuance. One of the things that I do across both the roles is get pretty involved in all the specifications that are going on. So with my Authleet hat on, I'm one of the chairs of the Digital Credentials Protocol Working Group at the OpenID Foundation, which is the group that develops OpenID for verifiable credential issuance, OpenID for verifiable presentations, and the high assurance interoperability profile that builds on top of those two specs. And then with my OpenID Foundation hat on, I build the protocol test suites for those same set of standards, as well as OpenID Foundation in general. We build semi-automated test suites for all of our specifications where we can. So again, I don't know how much context everyone in this call has. So if I start using acronyms that are unfamiliar or say things that don't make sense, please do feel free to interrupt and ask me to clarify. I'm fine with that. So the particular thing I wanted to talk about today is we've been doing a whole range of interoperability events at the OpenID Foundation on the verifiable credential specifications, the three I mentioned, so VCI, VP, and HAIP. So the aim of doing all that interoperability is firstly to prove out the specs, because as many of you have been aware, I think that we've been finishing off the specifications this year. The verifiable presentation spec went to 1.0 final status a month or two ago now. VCI is currently in the process of it's in what we call the public review period in the OpenID Foundation, which is one of the final stages before it actually gets voted on by the OpenID Foundation members. And then once that vote is successful, it gets published as final, and that's due. Remember, I think sometime the end of this month or the start of next month is when we're expecting that one to be published as final. And then we're also actively working on the HAIP specification. So these interop events have been a way to kind of bring everyone together, get them implementing the same version of the specification, because as I think any of you that have been following those specs and trying to implement them have been aware, there's been a lot of revisions along the way, and different sets of people have been using different versions of the standard, which makes it very hard to interop and check if the standards do actually work for interoperability, because if everybody's using a different version, then you're kind of by definition not interoperable. And actually pulling people onto the same version and getting lots of different people to test against each other is a really good way to make sure the specs are interoperable and people are actually interpreting them in the way that the authors intended and that kind of thing. And as I mentioned, we also have the OpenID Foundation test suite. So with my Conformance lead hat on, I was also taking part in these interop events, essentially providing the test suite that people would use to test their implementations, as well as doing the interop testing against other implementations. And obviously we've been pushing very hard at this. I think we've done 3 or 4 different interops now. I'm just going to talk about one of them today, just to give you a feel of how they played out, but they're all quite similar and done along. Done with a very similar ethos. So the particular one we're going to just review today is one that happened on the 5th of May, which was testing the verifiable presentation spec, combined with HAIP, also combined with the DC API. So that's the Digital Credentials API, so the standard from W3C that lets us do, let's verifiers request credentials in the web browser, and then it's handled partly in the browser UI before it's handed off to the wallet, which is a very good mechanism for security, preventing phishing of users and so on. It's one of the options in the VP spec. So this particular test was focused on that particular part, because we'd already done a previous interop that was looking at the kind of redirect traditional version of OpenID4VP. It's our executive director, Gail Hodges, that was actually running a lot of these interop events, doing the hard work of bringing everyone together and making sure they all did their results. And we have these fantastically complex spreadsheets that just be able to see that recorded all the results and the different bits of testing we were doing, when and where. And it takes a lot to keep on top of these. So we're very thankful that Gail came in and did that. Obviously, we're also working with other standards organizations as well. So seeing these interop events happen and be successful is the kind of thing like ISO is building on top of the OpenID for VP specs. Obviously, our partners at W3C working on the Digital Credentials API are very keen to see the specs finalized and working and see proof that they can actually be adopted and they'll work. Obviously, ETSI and NIST are also building on top of the specs. I'll talk a little bit more about NIST later. We've much of this already, so just skipping through. So I have lots of different people speaking at these events, and there is a recording of the full event, so I'm only giving a very quick summary here. I'll share the links for the recording afterwards if you want to see the full thing. But yeah, we had representatives from the US, the EU, and Japan. It was great. And these are some of the companies that we had participating. In this context, Open Wallet Foundation is referring to the MultiPass project, by the way. They decided that was how they wanted it branded. So, and yeah, there's one logo that's missing, as we had someone taking part that didn't have permission to kind of be mentioned publicly, unfortunately. These are the kind of participants and testing we will get. So obviously we're testing verifiers against wallets in this case. So not everybody could compete. Not everybody had a verifier, not everyone had a wallet. So some people had both, some people didn't. My next slide. So this is the results that we actually got from the manual pairwise testing. So we tested with both MDocs, essentially MDLs in this context, mobile driving licenses, and also with SDJOTs. We tested with 4 base different DUCL queries, DUCL being the digital credentials query language, which is the query language in the OpenID for verifiable presentations specs. We tried 4 different ways for the verifiers to kind of request the credential to be returned and check they worked in all the wallets. And we actually had an extra set for stress testing as well. So in total, we had 224 potential pairs of wallet/verifier combinations. There were a small number we didn't get results for, but the ones we, the ones we did get results for, we got a 90.2% pass rate, which was great. We did get 9.8% of failures, but in every case where something failed, it was some kind of known error, like it turned out that the correct certificate hadn't been uploaded into the certificate store, or there was just some misinterpretation of the spec that was obvious and we would know how to resolve, but the participants just didn't have time. And the particularly great result is that we didn't have any unknown errors. So, if anything went wrong, it was obvious why it went wrong and people very quickly figured it out. So that was very encouraging. So we also had NIST. So NIST have also been doing some Interop testing, but with a different set of partners. I don't know, this is NIST NCCOE project, so I don't know how much people know about that. NIST obviously is a big American institution, and they've been looking at how verifiable credentials can be used in the USA, and the particular use case they've been looking at is using MDLs to open bank accounts. So they've also been doing this kind of Interop testing, developing architectures and things. Don't need to go into that today, but that one thing they did do is build this automated Interop test in combination with Microsoft and Matter. So that was a very different way of testing from the manual Interops, and the advantage of this system was that it just acted as a verifier. It tried to collect credentials from the wallet, and then it just reported and collected success and failure automatically. So we also tried all the wallets through this system, and again we got pretty good success rates. The success rates here are lower, but that's not worrying. It's because how the success rate was recorded in this system was, it was the number of credential requests that got started versus the number that got answers for. So if anything went wrong in the middle, like the tester decided to go and get a cup of tea and things timed out, then that counted as a failure. So we were always expecting lower success rates here. But we do know that every wallet that was taking part managed to get through and have a successful run with this verifier. And we also tested different variants of the requests here. So just the base unsigned requests, unencrypted responses, and then the different variations of having the response encrypted or having the request signed. Again, slightly different figures across the things, but that's because not everyone has implemented all the options, and depending which one they tested first, they actually knew what they were doing by the time they get testing the second one, and so on. So, and I've got a video queued up. And if I selected the right option when I think I'm sharing my sound still, so let's see if this works. So I'm just going to play you one of the Interop results that we did on the day, just and show you what was going on, because obviously playing the full set, this is an hour and a half video. So this particular one is the Bundesdruckerei, so that's the German money, or is it passport, or both, printing company, their verifier, combined with the Android Credman wallet, the CM wallet. So we just play this.
With Mike, I don't know who wants to jump in first on this one. You want to go first for this one, Misha, or?
Yes, I can begin, but yeah. Bundesdruckerei also implements a verifier, and yeah, basically looks the same but different as Animal. So one big difference here is that we show the cross-device flow. So we maybe you stop the video shortly. So on the left side, we see the browser on a notebook or on the desktop, and where you are surfing on the verifier side. On the right side, you have the smartphone with your wallet. Maybe Lee can share some more details about how the two devices are linked together, because this is very critical, as Joseph already mentioned, so that the DC API brings some features that solve some issues regarding security and user experience we had before with the custom URI.
Let me just try and put the video into full screen and see if this actually works.
All right. So hopefully everyone can hear me. There's the presentation screen. We're kicking off. This will be an interoperability demonstration of OID4VP and the digital credentials API. We have an hour and a half here together, and we have
with two videos playing somehow. Try and figure out why that is.
And his other.
Apologies.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, so this demo.
Yeah, I'll just try and make it bigger rather than going to full screen. Maybe that's the way to go. I thought you could do that in YouTube.
That's it.
Is it's CM wallet on the phone, so the same wallet like a reference app that we talked about before. And then here they're running the verifier website on a laptop, and they make exactly the same DC API call on the website running on the desktop as if the website was running on the phone. The website doesn't need to deal with the fact that it's running on, like the verifier website doesn't need to deal with the fact that it's running on a desktop or a phone. It just makes the same digital credentials API call with the same OpenID4VP request. And here what Chrome is deciding to do is perform a cross-device flow to a phone, and it shows a QR code. It is Chrome showing that QR code when Gail played the video before and the QR code was showing up. This is the operating system showing this, or Chrome, depending on which operating system it's in. The phone then, the user scans this QR code with their normal phone camera, right, as you normally would. They would click present identity inside the camera application, and then you'll see some UX pop up this is from Android. So Android, if you pause here, Gail, Android is now establishing a secure connection between the laptop and the phone, and it does this at the OS level, and it does this with a strong proof of co-presence. So, and the protocol we use here is called CTAP. It's from the FIDO Alliance, and it's the same standard protocol we use for presenting passkeys across devices. And once that secure tunnel is set up, we prove that there's a strong proof of co-presence. so you don't get like phishing across the world. We went and sent the same query into the wallets on the phone, and here you can see that this query has gone off to the wallets in exactly the same way as it did before. And crucially here, the wallets don't have to do anything different either, right? They get the inbound OpenID query the same as if it was locally. Android sort of handles all that for you. So the user sees the same selection screen. They'll pick one, they'll do the biometric authentication, they'll generate the OpenID VP response, and then that will get sent back over this tunnel, and it will go back to the calling verify website, just transparently, all handled by the two operating systems. So you do the biometric, and then hopefully, the response is sent back over that pipe, straight back to the verifying website, and then this is the verify showing the response.
You choose to decide to show an ad, so that's probably a good place to stop. So as I say, see, that gives you a taste of the Interop event, but yeah, we went through doing a ridiculous number of pairs and took a while. So there's a limited number of times that it's useful to watch a QR code being scanned and a credential coming back. And yeah, as I say, as well as this one, we did the tests on OpenID4VP, the normal thing, and then just last month we did a similar Interop event on the verifiable credential issuance specification, again combined with the high assurance interoperability profile. We had conformance tests for that again, and we did the same kind of interop with, in that case, multiple wallets, multiple issuers, and got the same kind of results. I think we actually got slightly better results from the VCI one. That's in the mid-90s. I can't remember the exact figure off the top of my head, but it is showing that, yeah, when you put together implementations of these specifications, they can actually interop, which is a really good sign for, as we're kind of now looking to deploy these protocols at scale across the world, essentially. I think that's everything I had. So I'm very happy to take any questions or anything.
This was great. Thank you so much for the walkthrough and for the video. Let's see, what questions do folks on the call have for Joseph? David, looks like you got your hand up.
Yes, indeed. Joseph, that was great to see. Are the slides something you can share as well as the video?
I think they should be. I mean, they're all public, so yeah, let me, I'll try and have links for them. Yeah, that should be fine.
It's going to be very useful for the architecture SIG because we have an OWF project mapping program underway where we're really looking at interop standards, dependencies, a whole range of things, but we're looking to build navigable maps that allow people, especially the community, to come in and mix and match and find the bits they need. So this would be extremely useful to be aware of. And I presume you're familiar with Credemy, who came a couple of weeks back to talk about the tool they built using your test suite, which was pretty good to see as well. So I don't know if you've engaging with the people at Fork Bomb.
Oh yes, I know the people at Fork Bomb.
Yeah, so I think they were already advocating the work you've already done. So I thought that was quite a useful joining of the dots there.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. I didn't actually realise they'd come and presented the stuff at OWF.
Yeah.
Busy with getting the specifications finished lately, so not managing to pay as much attention to some other things, unfortunately.
Yeah. And just for my own awareness, how much effort did each of these partners involved in this interop testing, how much effort did they have to put in to be ready to do it?
So I mean, the majority of the difficulty was implementing the version of the standards, because everybody that was coming into this already had an implementation of the standard, but not necessarily the version we were actually testing. So for some of them, I think they were on a version that was a year or two old. So that was a relatively significant uplift for them. For some of them, it was the first time that they'd implemented the digital credentials API. So that was obviously a little bit of learning, particularly for the wallets, where you have to like integrate the WASM wallet matcher that Google provide and things like that, which is a little bit different from a standard Android development cycle. So yeah, there were varying amounts of effort. I mean, once you've got the implementation, it was just a case of kind of creating certificates, sharing certificates, getting the certificates imported, making sure they had the queries done, and then, you know, it's actually doing interop testings like an hour or something to do each of the 7 wallets, and an hour in total.
And what's the feedback on DCQL? People like
Yep. So just for background on that question for everyone else, the OpenID for Verifiable Presentation Spec originally used a standard called Presentation Exchange from DIF for specifying the credentials you wanted to retrieve. That worked very well, but we kept on getting feedback that it was actually a little bit complex. It was a place that people were finding interoperability problems. We got some very strong feedback from some of the people in the more browser web space that it was overly complex and there was a much simpler solution to the problem. So Duckle was, you know, inspired by Presentation Exchange, but looked to simplify the things, whereas Presentation Exchange intended to be a very general solution.
Right.
Duckle was targeted just at OpenID for VP, so that meant it could be simpler and much more direct, and so on. And yeah, the very long story is we've been getting very good feedback on Duckle. People are finding it intuitive, they're finding it easy to implement. You know, I think we had some implementations just come up in a day or two. People were really finding it straightforward and great feedback. And it was that feedback that meant we actually had the confidence to, before OpenID for Verifiable Presentations actually got published as 1.0 final, we actually completely removed the Presentation Exchange option. Originally, we're thinking that we'd probably end up having both options in the specification, but the feedback for Duckle was so positive that it just made sense to not even ship the Presentation Exchange alternative. And obviously, having only the one query language is much better for interoperability.
That's very useful. Thank you. Is there anything we should have asked you that we haven't?
I mean, you should have asked me how you run the conformance test with your own implementations and how you test them, because obviously you're all very keen to do that.
I was going to ask you this. Yes, please help. Anything you can add to this part, because we are getting to that point.
Yeah, so I've just shared the link to the slides in chat.
Thank you.
And yeah, so for the test suites, pushing the documentation is a little bit of a weak point. We are a team of engineers, and we're very good at writing code, not necessarily quite so good at writing instructions and keeping them up to date. I'll just share the links in chat, those to the OpenID for Verifiable Presentations and OpenID for Verifiable Credential Issuance instructions. They'll hopefully get you started. As I say, keeping these instructions up to date as we add to the tests and have to update the tests to support newer spec versions. We understand the pain of everyone else is going through trying to keep up with spec versions. We're experiencing exactly the same pain as well. So there may be slight oddities. I definitely recommend making sure that you're on the final or very latest versions of the specs, because the VCI and VP specs really are quite stable now. We're not expecting, sorry, VP is already published. VCI, we're not expecting any breaking changes before it gets published. So really do encourage people to implement those latest versions of the spec now, that they are not changing under you anymore. And Trying to thought a little bit somehow. Yeah, we do have a team that can support you on these tests as well if you run into problems. We've got an OpenID Foundation Slack that we can get you onto. There's those pages I sent should all have the email address for the certification team at the bottom, which if you can't figure things out, just email us. I am going to try and do a kind of set of quick introductory videos sometime over the next few weeks that kind of just guide people through the basics of running the tests and how to configure them and so on. But there should be example configurations in the instructions. So I'd always start from the example configurations, but just make sure they are set to use the latest version of the tests and so on. As I say, it's actually a very straightforward process to run the tests. It's actually getting the setup right, making sure. So obviously, say if you're testing a wallet, the tests are pretending to be a verifier, which means you have to give them everything that you would normally give a verifier. So, something. So particularly, you'll need to give it like the private key that's used to sign requests, or the X5C certificate that the wallet will accept. You have to configure that into the tests. You have to tell it which. If you're using vanilla OpenID4VP, the original OpenID4VP, you might be using a particular custom scheme. You have to configure the test, tell the test suite which custom scheme it is that will open your wallet. And that kind of thing. But I mean, it's just a website you log into, you provide configuration, the UI is pretty smooth. And then you get a list of tests to run, and you also have to start doing this on a device that's got your wallet, or you have to support cross-device flows. If you're testing the DC API, you have to be on Chrome because Safari doesn't have support yet in their shipping versions. Yeah, I think that covered it, but as I say, I'll do some videos eventually. I'll post them on my LinkedIn, and they should go up on the OpenID website as well. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you want. I'll stick the LinkedIn link in chat as well. As I say, I'll try and share everything in there. So keep an eye on there. And sorry, I think you've had your hand up a while, Chair.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was wondering, just with the results being so positive, what were the takeaways from the Interop event? Were there lessons learned, and will there be more events like this in the future?
So we got a couple of bits of feedback on bits of the spec that people had interpreted in different ways. So they were all fixed before the specs. The next versions of the specs got published. So, I mean, that was a really good outcome that makes it much easier for the people that are implementing the specs next. And yeah, I mean, I think the main lessons learned is that, these do actually seem to be pretty interoperable protocols. We always suspected and hoped that, and we had some evidence of that from some of the large scale pilots as well, but doing it in a kind of more worldwide setting, we still got that same result, that they're interoperable, which was obviously really good.
Yeah, that's great. Good to hear.
Thank you very much.
I was also curious, you said the cross-device flows were the target here. Was there any talk about the same device flow or plans for that in the future in terms of interop testing?
So it wasn't particularly that we were targeting cross-device. So this particular test was using the digital credentials API. So that just transparently works same device or cross-device. So if you start the stuff on your phone, then it won't show you a QR code by default, and we just offer to open up the wallet on your phone. Whereas if you do it on a desktop, it will kind of default to the QR code flows, but it just looks exactly the same. So we don't have to, when we're testing that, we don't actually have to worry about if we're testing cross-device or same device. If the verifier and wallet work in one of the cases, they'll work in the other case as well, unless they've done something really, really, really weird.
Okay, cool, thanks.
But yeah, I think we're probably done for interops for this year. Possibly we might do one more on HAIP, maybe, but I'm not sure. As I say, we've been through HAIP and VCI and VP. both the options in VP, and we did VCI, and we even did a little bit of testing in VCI with the browser digital credentials API as well as the normal version. So that digital credentials API of issuance isn't actually in the VCI spec yet, so we were well ahead of the curve there, but we did the Interop testing on that, and that worked as well. Didn't have so many implementations of that, obviously, with it not being in the specification yet even, but it did work, so that was good for when we do add it to the specification, which I think will be in the 1.1 revision.
Okay, thanks for the info.
Yeah, no worries.
Let's see, what other questions do folks have for Joseph?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, so way back earlier, when you talked about your testing, and you talked about how you prove proximity or location versus phishing, and you talked about some techniques that you used. Could you talk more about those, or give the links to them, or is that within scope or outside of the scope that you do? I'm more on the reader side, right? The hardware side of a verifier. So.
Yep. So that was actually Lee Campbell from Google that you were hearing talking about that on the video. But I can explain what was going on there. So it was related to the digital credentials API. When that's going cross-device, it's actually building on top of the CTAP protocol, which nobody has heard of, but a lot of people have used because that's the same protocol that's used to do passkeys cross-device. I'm hoping everyone has heard of passkeys at this point. I'd be disappointed if you haven't. So what the digital credentials API does is it builds on top of that same CTAP transport that's used to transfer, to allow you to use a passkey from your phone on your desktop or from one phone on a different phone and that kind of thing, which is all well-proven technologies. And it expands that to the verifiable credentials case. So the advantage of doing that is that CTAP protocol already has all the proximity checks in it. So it's by default establishes a Bluetooth connection between the devices to prove that they are actually close to each other. So that completely eliminates the possibility of an attacker kind of sending the user a QR code and getting them to submit a credential into a session that's controlled by the attacker instead of the intended place. So yeah, that's why all the security people that understand the digital credentials API are telling everybody that you need to use the digital credentials API, because it's really the only solution we have in this space for actually making the cross-device credential presentation flows unphishable. I'm one of the authors of the VP spec, and it has a very nice cross-device flow that uses QR codes with custom scheme URLs in them and stuff. But there's just no real interoperable, standardized technologies we can use to actually make that secure in any sensible way. So digital credentials API is the way, and you just get it for free when you use it, basically. And I promise Google is not paying me.
No, of course not. So you're helping to unpeel the onion, is that the right term? To dig deeper into the subject. So whenever we say sharing credentials and we talk about the identity credential API, digital credentials API, that's the same thing as when you talk about exchanging passkeys. You're basically using the CTAC protocol underneath all of that at a lower level.
Yeah. There's an extra field or flag or something, but yeah, it's all the same, basically.
It's all the same. Okay. And the CTAC is CTAK as in the chat. Is there a link to that, or is it is that outside of your scope?
So that's a standard from FIDO. I thought
talking
it was
about
CTAP, actually.
CTAP. I'm just putting the link now.
Great, thank you.
There you go.
I understand you use a digital credential. Okay.
It's the FIDO Alliance client standard.
Oh, okay. If we only spoke the same language, right? It's okay. It's all the same thing. But you said on top of the passkeys, you said there's something added for the digital credential. Did I miss that?
There's a extra flag or
Extra
field or
field.
something, and it's undergoing standardization at the moment. But I know Apple and Google have already implemented it and done cross-platform interop. So like,
Yes,
I think it was IIW last year, they actually showed that working cross-device and cross-platform.
yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yes. Something simple as that. Two companies working together. Okay, well, thank you. I don't want to take up any more of your time. This really was helped answer some of my questions.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, and if people have other questions later, as I say, the certification team email address is there, or send me on LinkedIn or whatever. Probably emailing certification team is best, because then other people can pick it up if I'm on holiday, which I am next week, hopefully. But yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks, Chair.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joseph. And thank you for the links in the chat. I will make sure that those go into the wiki page for those following along in the recording. Yeah, thanks for the video. Thanks for the presentation and discussion. Really appreciate your time. Let's see. Join us everyone next week to hear from Mirko Malik, who's on the call today, about EUDI PLO, the EUDI protocol liaison operator, which is the middleware layer that speaks fluent EUDI wallet specs, so your backend doesn't have to. So join us for that next week. Thank you so much, Joseph, for your time today, and have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.